I'll call the meeting to order, and our first item of business is a motion to excuse Lionel and Clarence, and Kelly will move that. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And then on to the adoption of the December 6th minutes. Hubie? No concerns? All in favor of adopting those minutes? Motion is carried. Post agenda items. Any post agenda, Lane?
2 in-camera land matters.
Kevin, anything from you? Okay. Anything else for post agenda? If not, could I get a motion to adopt the agenda and the removes? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We have nothing that I'm aware of in question period and notice of motion. We have public hearings today at 11:30, and the planning and development staff are coming back in ahead of that to look at the other items that are underneath the public hearing. So we'll move on, and we have Todd coming in later at 1, and so we'll go, I think we're going to jump right to item 10.2. All right, tax payment request. Or was that, oh, do you have Matt coming in later too, Mariana?
Sorry, I've inquired to see if Matt's able to come in here right away. He just hasn't picked up on the email yet.
Okay, we can carry on until he gets here to item 10.3, I guess, would be funding requests of MakerSpace and City County Mental Health Network. Well, that's budget too, so we'll keep going. All right, Lane, how about 10.4? Possible participation, renewable energy initiatives.
Okay, there's a number of things that are going on right now at the provincial level when it comes to encouragements that are out there for communities to get involved in developing renewable energy projects. And I guess the question is whether or not council has an interest or wants us to explore further the possibilities of participating in those areas where there are funds currently being made available to encourage municipalities and community groups to get involved in the development of renewable energy systems. I've tried to outline for council the areas where there are opportunities to get involved. There certainly is a chance for the county to submit an application for funding to develop renewable energy systems that would offset energy requirements for municipally owned and operated facilities. There's also opportunities for community groups that are operating facilities to apply for funding under those same programs. And then there's an opportunity for the county to facilitate homeowner and landowner applications that would also entitle them to access funds, both grant funds at the provincial level, as well as funds that would be available to finance the installation costs that they would incur directly. But in order for them to do that, the county would need to make it possible for that program to be implemented throughout the municipality. So the question for council is, are you wanting us to follow through and provide more information and with the intent of pursuing some of these programs that are out there? That basically summarizes the issue. I think there's a window of opportunity that still exists for us to do that. And if it's going to happen, we should probably be moving on it sooner rather than waiting longer to make a decision as to whether or not there is interest in increasing the level of participation in these programs.
Questions? Wayne?
I've looked at, I've read on your thing, the one with for the municipality. Am I correct in assuming that 5 million is the maximum we could apply for, and we would have to come up with 3.5?
$5 million would be the amount of the project in order to access the 1.5 million in grant funding that the municipality is able to receive.
This is just an estimate that you've come up with. So it could cost $8 million, and then we would get, what, a third of that?
No, in order to maximize the amount that the county can receive, the county's maximum allocation under this program would be 1.5 million.
Okay.
In order to access that, the project cost would have to come in at 5 million, which means the county covers the difference between the 1.5 and the 5.
Would there be a cost on the other two programs, like on number 3 here, or private property owners? Would there be a cost to the county involved there, or is it just that they'd make their payments through a development tax or whatever?
The impact on the organization, if the decision is made to participate in the PACE program, would be limited to the administrative effort involved in implementing that program. We would have to pass the borrowing bylaw so that funds can be accessed. It would be the same basically as what we go through for a local improvement funded project. So that there would be no direct out-of-pocket costs other than the administrative effort to administer that program.
Brian?
Well, I'm interested from a point of view of the community organization, and maybe then the numbers become less feasible when you look at like a community hall or a rec center that, you know, arena, for example, that really only operates for, well, let's just use a number, 8 or 9 months a year. And whether the business case works out the same, whether it's still that 7-year payback that you referred to, or whether it's more practical in a situation like an administration building with a shop, or and I guess this is a question: is this program available for partner corporations like NRSC, where, you know, they have a fixed use or fairly constant use on a daily basis, and whether that's practical for, you know, similarly to municipal office where there's activity at least 300 some plus days a year. So I'm just curious about the ability to partner with other, you know, organizations, and whether the business case works on just for those, or does it work for rec centers and arenas that, you know, they're suffering from high costs as far as energy, and whether this is an opportunity for them to reduce their budget if they came up with the capital funds to be able to do it. It would insulate the county, but whether we could partner with them on being able to do some of these things.
It's my understanding from reviewing the information from Energy Efficiency Alberta that they are doing all that they can to encourage as many applications as possible to come in. So ag societies qualify, community organizations, municipal operations. I anticipate fully that New Regional Services Corporation would qualify for a funding application to be submitted as well. And I don't think that an application submitted by that organization would reduce the allocation that the municipality, that the county would be eligible to receive. You know, obviously, with an application from NRSC, the board of directors would have to approve that, which would mean getting support from the other municipalities that are represented on the board of directors for those organizations. But I'm fully convinced that there are opportunities for all of those agencies to also participate.
Lane, are you aware of any other municipalities that have done the PACE program, set it up?
It's relatively new. It has just been announced, and the enabling regulation legislation, I think, is taking effect in January. So I would expect that there's probably some that have expressed interest, but I don't believe that any are in a position to have implemented that program yet.
Wayne.
I think maybe this question might be for Kevin. Do you see an advantage for the county to do this? Would we save on our utility bills or whatever if we got into this project? Because it said it'd be pay off in about 7 years.
Well, I think if the calculations are right, that the funding comes back within 7 years, I think it's a smart investment, because if you have a physical life of something of 25 years, then you have 18 years of surplus that you're dealing with. It's initially a cash flow issue. In order to be able to fund it, you're also subject to future policies of the province and the feds with regards to renewable energy. So, there's always risks in terms of where that goes. But if those numbers are accurate on a 7-year payback, then it's a smart business case as far as I'm concerned.
Other thoughts or comments? Anne-Marie.
I like the community halls as a starting point. I'm not too crazy about investing $3.5 million. But if we start with the community halls and recreation centers, that might be a good way to go.
I've been thinking about this also, and I don't agree with the community halls and stuff, because I don't see a whole, outside of castles, I don't see a community hall in the area that might last 25 years. I look at my own. What's that? Okay, but the problem is, I want to do it for ourselves, like the $3.5 million, but do we have the money? I'm not sure.
So okay, Brian?
Well, I agree with you, Wayne. It's a rare thing that we agree, but I think that using the business case for a facility that uses power pretty much every day, to me makes the most sense, because then you're going to get the maximum payback. And then I think the community portion of it, I would like to leave that up to the community, but make them aware. And if they see the business case where they can see the payback, I think it's difficult to get a 7-year payback on a community hall, because they're just the usages is not incremental. And yeah, if you could feed it back into the grid and get some credits, blah blah blah, but they're just not the same as using the energy yourself. It's going to be a better payback for those facilities. So that's where so my question is can you find out more about what the actual cost would be for a facility like our administration building? I'm curious to see what that cost comes back at. I mean, we've got lots of roof space. We've got a brand new Todd Green big T out there building, and we got this building. So there's enough roof space to put them on. I'm just curious whether, if that's the way we go, but I'm curious what to satisfy our minimum needs as far as what we take care of, what we would generate or what we would need on an average basis, what that model would look like and what that investment would entail.
Also, Lane, all of these solar installations would be put up by a third party, and they would be responsible for maintenance and all of that stuff.
What we would need to do is go through the process of procuring a service provider who would come in and do the installation. I would anticipate that we would want to basically go through a request for proposal process. There are a number of installers that are out there. We would want to specify what our expectations are, do up a contract, and they would be responsible for the installation. And as part of that, we could also include ongoing maintenance service beyond the initial installation and activation of the service as well. It wouldn't be a whole lot different than what we're going through when it comes to obtaining ongoing maintenance for our mechanical systems. It's a specialized service. People are out there that can provide that.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm just thinking if you had community groups, I mean, they struggle to keep somebody cleaning in their community halls. So if all of a sudden they've got these things that they've got to maintain, yeah, I just sort of wondered about that. Also, and then I'll go to Kevin, the PACE program, what if we put it out there that, you know, this is available, and if there's ratepayers that are interested, that we would, you know, could work with them to set it up, because I don't think we should put a lot of time into something that no one might be interested in doing, because there's lots, I think there's already been subsidies, haven't there, for homeowners to get involved?
Yeah, what there is right now, any homeowner, any farmer that has gone through the eligibility criteria can apply for and receive a subsidy to install service on their property. That's already in place. What the PACE program does, it allows the homeowner to fund their contribution through their property taxes. And in order for that to happen, the municipality has to be involved.
So we're looking at homeowners that wouldn't upfront any money.
They wouldn't have to. They would be able to apply
I hope
for
they
it.
could pay their taxes.
Correct. And the amount that they owe on their taxes, if it's funded through this program, would be recovered in the same way as property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
You're guaranteed repayment on that.
Kevin.
Yeah, so the research I've done on solar, you know, the roof mounts are viable for certain type of houses depending on the roof structure and the loads that they can handle. The most important thing, I think, is they need to face south. Otherwise, if you don't have your solar set to receive the most amount of sun, you have to set up quite a few more panels in order to make that viable. So from our perspective here with this property, if we were interested, is what I would think we should do is look at 10 or 12, 14 acres to the south of us, run the wire in and connect in that way rather than look at trying to put something on the flat roof. It's easier to clean, it's easier to access. There's lots of land there available. We do have a lease that's subject to part of the quarter here. I'm not sure there would be some impacts there, but if that was something that was to be looked at, that would be where I would think logically it should go. You can get the panels that track as well, and they're more efficient. They cost more money, but you know, they could be weighed as well so that they move from the east to the west as the sun moves. They also move up and down so that in the winter time you have a different degree of angle than you do in the summer. But so, I mean, there's those things to think about as well.
Kelly.
The point I wanted to make everybody aware of is that the business plan is best case scenario usually, so 7 years payback. We found that at Shortgrass. That's what they told us when we invested, and we're probably going to double that just because of the return, the sun available. So that's something, you know, we kind of gloss over. We hear 7 years and okay, we can take that. But we have to remember that that's a salesman pitch. Yeah. So
That's an interesting, like Shortgrass Library, that's in Medicine Hat.
we installed, I'm going to say, between 3 and 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And Petra could provide more detailed information than I certainly. We do get every month we get a copy of the production, and it's generally cents off a bill. It's very small.
Yeah, that's interesting because I remember touring there and them telling a group of us all about it, and it might be good to get some information, actual information about people who've done that. Yeah. Yeah. Any other comments, or just maybe for continue on with more information then, Lane, or?
We can certainly do that. We could use our social media networks to float that information out about the PACE program and see whether or not there is homeowner or landowner interest in the municipality getting involved in that program. I can certainly initiate contact with Petra there, with Shortgrass as well, and see what their experience has been. And there are a number of other municipalities that have installed solar on many of their community facilities, and I can reach out to some of those as well to see what their experience has been and if they would do it over again, having already gone down that path.
I think that's a good thing to do. Yeah. If you could do that, Lane, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. We will make sure that our planning people who have a number of meetings this afternoon get everything finished. We will do the item, which there's an item that isn't connected to the public hearings, right, Alice? We'll look at that. 8.2? 8.2. Item 8.2 will get out of the road. The rest is public, connected to the public hearings. Then we'll go back to Matt.
Thank you. So this application is for second and third reading for road closure bylaw 1932-18. It is a closure and lease shown on the map above with Spruce Lane Potatoes, Southeast 31, Northwest 29. It was allowed to proceed as a lease at the October 11th meeting. Public hearing was held November 8th. Then sent to Alberta Transportation for review. It has now been returned from Alberta Transportation and has been signed and is here for second and third reading. I can answer any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions? If not, motions for second reading. Anne-Marie? Move second reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And for third reading, Ellen makes that motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And so that's it except for the public hearings part, right? So Matt, we'll move to item 10.2. The tax payment request from Torkson.
Morning.
Good morning.
So we have received a letter from Torkson Energy requesting some consideration of the current climate for our oil and gas producers. In their letter, Torkson kind of reviews all the work they have done this last year in the region. I think we've seen a few drilling rigs out, which has been nice to see. The night sky lit up with those sticks in the air. Torxton requested that we consider instituting a TIP program, tax installment payment program. We have considered that in the past, kind of the opinion that the cost and administration of a TIP program outweighs the benefits for our rural municipality. It's typically of benefit to residences, and where our property taxes come largely from oil and gas and commercial. We think multiplying a transaction by 12 isn't the best course for us. So in the absence of that, Torxton has requested that we look at considering an individual installment plan. I ran some numbers. We're open to this idea. I think where companies are proactive in coming to us far ahead of the tax deadline. They're not coming June 16th and asking for us to waive penalties and all of that stuff. They're trying to get ahead of things. Torxton is one of our top 10 taxpayers. Synovus previous to them. I'm open to the idea of working with them. I threw some numbers in there for the cash flow that they provided. I did contact Darren, their CFO, and suggest that we move the payments to the first of each month, if he was open to that. And then you'll notice I ran an interest calculation. Well, if we get money ahead of time, we're going to earn some interest that we wouldn't have earned. And then if we get some money late, we're going to forego some interest. There's a small $6,000 difference, roughly. Torxton indicated that they'd be willing to cover that difference. So for me, if it's going to be a wash, I'm open to accommodating one of our good corporate ratepayers on this.
Matt, is this a one-year plan?
I threw that question to Darren. I said, is this a 2019 only ask? And he said, well, it is for now. So depending how this rolls out, I wouldn't be surprised if they come back in 2020 and ask for the same thing. I guess one thing to consider is if we open the door for Torxton, it also would open the door for any of our other ratepayers to come with the same request. So we would be setting a precedent if we allowed it for Torxton. We'd need to do the same for the others.
For all others?
That's
a question for 10.
Yeah, that's a question for council, right? So, what concerns me about our oil and gas ratepayers? We've been very fortunate in the past. We've had really good collection rates. We've been 98% and higher. I talked to our colleagues just south of us, and they're a little jealous that we don't have the same kind of problems with oil and gas producers. So we do have a few that are delinquent on our tax rolls, and where we rely so heavily on that sector to cash flow our priorities and initiatives in the community. I think it's positive to work with these guys in advance of things going south.
I have to say that when I read this letter, I was totally impressed by the way it was put together and by the fact that they provided an answer to an issue that is obviously coming to them in a big way. And I don't know if any of the rest of you have noticed how busy they've been out in the county. Like, it is nice to see something happening. It gives one hope that life will carry on in oil and gas and in Alberta. So I totally support your recommendation, Matt. I really do. It was refreshing to me after some of the other companies that have approached us. This to me was professional, and it was a solution presented. Brian and Anne-Marie.
Well, I guess my only question was administratively, how big of a challenge is this for, because I think you're right. I think with, this is one, but let's assume that this becomes something that's multiplied. I mean, it's hard. It would be very difficult for me to make a decision just because they're the biggest ratepayer versus the smallest. If the smallest ratepayer came and asked for the same conditions, it'd be hard for me to deny that, even though it's probably not practical. So then the question is administratively, how big of a challenge is? And I just wanted to add to, I support it too. And I understand, when you're in business, cash flow is a big thing. And if you can channel that cash flow on a regular monthly basis, I think there's a lot of merit to it. And I like to think also that some of the reason perhaps we have 98%, which is, nobody in tax rate, I don't know how to word it. So 2% tax rate every year, let's put it that way, and 98% compliance is because, whether it's right or not, is because of the ability for us to be a little bit more flexible and cooperative with these people, with these businesses that pay most of the tax rates. So.
Yeah, in developing the RFD, we did survey the top 8 rural municipalities that had large linear assessments. So that's your Parkland, your Brazeau, Wheatland, Cypress County, to see which of those municipalities did offer a TIP program. So the TIP program is one where the ratepayer has to sign up, they give us their bank information, and then each month we send a file to the bank and we reach in and we pull the cash out and we do our thing. Some of the trouble that 2 of the municipalities who no longer allow the oil and gas companies to tap into that program is it just became a headache when they went to reach in and the cash wasn't there. So a few had problems. The other 6 that we heard back from didn't have issues, and then there were 2 that just also didn't extend it to the commercial side. It was solely for residential. So there's a mix out there of what's available. I haven't sat down and crunched the numbers as to what it would look like if we offered a TIP program, who's going to actually sign up. I would be hopeful after we configured our systems. We need to do some system configuration to enable the TIP program. Hopefully it wouldn't be too bad because it's electronic files that you're sending, electronic files that you're receiving. The rub would just be when people don't have money in their account, and then you have to go chase that stuff and charge NSF and all of that stuff. So I don't have a clear answer for what kind of administrative burden it would be for us if we opened the doors wide open.
I guess that's something you can review every year, after a year, just see how much time it took. I do think they have to cover the $6,000 difference, and especially if there's more companies coming, we have to make sure that we get all the money back.
Yeah, I agree with that. The MGA allows council to defer the collection of a tax with or without conditions. One of the conditions I would look at is that it's kind of a net revenue neutral kind of a thing. So if we enable them to manage their cash flow the way they'd like, we'd do the financial calculations to make sure that we get enough on the front end to offset what we lose on the back end. And we'd also want to have some conditions in there for how many payments can you miss before we just toss the agreement and say you need to just pay it by the deadline and you're subject to the same penalty bylaws as everybody else. So for this, I really like the program that we have right now. I think it's administratively simple. I wouldn't recommend, unless you hear a lot from your residential ratepayers demanding a TIP program for them to manage their cash flow. This would be, I think, a one-off that we're looking at for our commercial oil and gas guys to help get them through.
Yeah, and I think that it it gives a little bit of a nod to the importance of their investment in our community. It's huge. I mean, people are rallying to make that point to our other provinces and to our country. So, yeah, I totally support the notion for this case. So, Kelly.
I think you're ready for a motion, and I'm ready to give that.
Okay.
As Matt, with those conditions added, please.
Everybody clear on that? Okay. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried, I'd say unanimously, from the 8 people that are here today. Matt, we've still got some time till public hearings, so I just wondered if you, in case there's questions for the MakerSpace and Mental Health Network, questions?
Sure.
Item 10.3, that would be then. And I think there's a bit of information in here, but the idea was that we discuss this a little bit farther prior to finalizing budget because we weren't clear. We did know that an ask had been made from the Brooks MakerSpace, and that document is in there. What page is that, Matt? Doesn't matter, it's up there.
15. The slide.
Right. So $25,000 was for 2019, 20,000 after that annually. So we would have to make a decision whether or not it's going into the budget for 2019, correct? Okay. Discussion? Kelly.
So my feeling on this is that, again, this is social services, and that we have an organization in place to handle our social services. Now, if that chair was here, he would probably say yes, but we don't have 20,000. So then that organization, in my mind, should be coming to us. I do not want to see us begin funding one-off social services when we have an organization in place to do that. My feelings.
And you're referencing FCSS as the big guy. Other comments? Wayne.
I just want to support Kelly on that. I agree with that also, that if we get into this funding individual organizations, they're going to be coming all the time. And we have an organization already that's there to do this, and let's let them do their job.
Other thoughts? Speechless. Do you like the concept of passing the buck and getting FCSS to make a recommendation? Is that the whole idea of that? Anne-Marie, Ellen?
Yeah, let's pass the buck, and then for both MakerSpace and mental health. It's not, well, MakerSpace is clear where the money goes. With the mental health one, it's not clear to me who's actually going to get that money and who's going to look after it. So if we can do it through FCSS, that would make it easier for the other municipalities too, for the city of Brooks and the smaller ones if they want to be involved.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how with the mandate of FCSS, how that works. It is too bad that Clarence is not with us today. But would it be possible that we sort of refer this to FCSS to get some more information from them as to how they would handle it? If we want to go that way? Tracy? Or Alan was next, then Tracy.
know exactly what you just said before. We have the organization in place, and love to see some more information from them.
Tracy?
Well, I guess in a way I disagree with that, getting more information from FCSS. If we're going to say as a group that we believe that these programs should be funded through FCSS, then it's up to that organization to process these requests. So I don't see any benefit in getting any more information from them. I think we can make our decision.
Except for the fact these are big amounts of money. And I think they would end up having to come back to us, I guess, is what I'm thinking would be the next step. Perhaps, but maybe not. Good point. You know, Kelly?
And to the point of the mental health presentation, I don't know if you all remember, I specifically asked the presenters if they were asking for funds, and that was only 4 weeks ago. And today we're deliberating over whether we're funding them or not. So the answer from the presenter was they were not.
Right.
So I'm confused what happened there in that 4 weeks time.
And definitely with that ask, I think Alberta Health Services and the present provision of mental health services has to be relied upon to give guidance. I mean, we're venturing into a whole area beyond our understanding of what's best. So we do need more information, I think, before I do anyhow, before we can make, definitely on that one. The MakerSpace one, I think we have probably enough information. I'm not sure, so we could delay again for more information because the budget isn't, it's not going to be approved for some time. So we have a sort of a mixed idea here. Tracy says, why are we asking them for more information? Because they're ultimately going to come back to us, perhaps. But I think we are also saying we're not sure of what it is being asked for. Tracy?
Yeah, I think I believe for what I got from the information we were presented that MakerSpace was quite clear on what they were asking. The mental health, I didn't really get those details, and I didn't really get that even from their presentation. I was unsure if they really were asking for support or if more or less it was just a recognition, this is what we're trying to do, just education on their programming. So that's the part I am unclear on with the mental health, that there even is an ask.
Right. Well, I think it's only fair because Councillor Amulong has been away on holiday that we leave him some work when he comes back. So I'm quite all right in waiting to get some more information involving FCSS, just as the ask as to, is it something that they could even get involved in? Because they do have some rules around how they give out their money too. So if there was a pot of money that had to be made bigger, that they could make decisions about it. So, Matt, we're okay if we bring it back onto the next agenda, perhaps, and we can get Clarence to, speak to it. Brian?
Yeah, the component, the mental health component, I totally agree with you guys as far as the FCSS engagement and recommendation when it comes to that part. The MakerSpace, the part that I struggle with is to me this fits into education. This fits into education, whether it's Grassland separate, the French system or others. It's I don't know, and that's where I look at that, and I think maybe they should step up and I don't know what their budget looks like. It's not for me to decide, but I almost think that through their requisition that should, if they deem it as a possibility that they see value in it, that's where it should fit. As far as coming to the county, I'm not sure that I would support that.
Right, and they are part of the funding model already. Just probably don't have enough. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get some more information on it. Okay. I think we are. Thank you, Matt. We are at our public hearing time. So I'm just going to find that on my agenda here. Do some introductions, do some, get some of the rules of the public hearing organized so people who have not attended a public hearing before are understanding of the process. And that is item 7.2 on our agenda. Yes, so for public hearings, the first thing we do is move into the public hearing, which takes us out of the regular council meeting. And it's important that people, there's a few things that I always like to remind people of. Your conversations are being recorded by the media. You could also be on our YouTube channel because we're on TV as well. We don't allow hats and caps, and you need to turn off your phones if you're not used to doing that in public things. So I think that's all. And I'll ask for a motion to move into public hearing. Moved by Brian. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried, and we are into public hearing. At this time, I will ask for our staff to give an outline of what it is we're hearing about in public. Can you guys all hear me? Good. Because sometimes you can't hear very well in this room. And the people who are presenting have an opportunity to answer questions and to present further information if need be. And so do people who are not in favor or not supportive of the ask that is taking place. So you will all have a chance to speak. I will ask also for names. We'll do introductions right now before I talk anymore. You wonder who I am. My name is Molly Douglas, and I represent the far north part of the county, the Jam-Finnegan area, and I chair the council meetings because of the position that I'm in as REIT. And we'll go this way.
Anne-Marie Phillipson, Patricia area.
Good morning, Hebe Kellen, Tilly area, Division 2.
Good morning, Tracy Fife, Division 5, Castles, Lake Resort, Milk Creek areas.
Brian DeJong, and I represent the village, or around the village of Dutchess.
Lane Johnson, the Director of Corporate Services.
Ariana Nielsen, Executive Assistant.
Ellen Unra, and I represent the countryside around the village of Rosemore.
Wayne Hammergan, Division 4, Scandia, Rainier, and Bow City.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Chrisman. I'm from Division 6, the Bazzano area on the west side.
Welcome, I'm Kevin Stevenson, County Administrator.
And I'll also have our people here that are with the public can identify themselves, and we'll start, I think, at the back. Thank you. All right. And Diane is presenting the information for this on us. Thank you. Go ahead, Diane.
Great, thank you very much. So again, this is public hearing for Bylaw 1935-18. And the purpose of the application is to redesignate approximately a 0.18 acre or 0.07 hectare portion of an existing 1.83 acre or 0.74 hectare title, legally described as Lot C, Block 5, Plan 152, FK, within the hamlet of Rolling Hills, from the Parks and Recreational Land Use District to direct control to accommodate the relocation of the Rolling Hills Post Office. It's proposed that the portion of the lot on which the existing community hall is located be used for the new location of a building to house the post office in the hamlet. As again, this use is very specific, direct control of the land is the most appropriate option. Council would be the development authority for any applications regarding development on the portions of the lot that is rezoned. The applicant has provided written confirmation from the landowner, which grants permission for the rezoning application, and there is a narrative in your package as well. So again, part of this was received first reading at the last council meeting. There was notification for the 2 consecutive weeks in the Brooks Bulletin, and adjacent landowners were also notified. We do also send circulations to required referral agencies, and we did receive responses back from Fortis and TELUS and Alberta Transportation, and none of them indicated any concerns with the rezoning. I do want to take council through the Schedule B, which is attached to your bylaw, which again outlines the specific guidelines with regards to development on this lot. So again, 17.1 indicates permitted uses are as follows: moved-in buildings, post office, accessory uses, building structures associated with the post office. So those are the only uses that in which permits could be granted if successful. Again, there's a typo, so 17.2, council shall be the decision-making authority for all permitted use applications. So again, the Municipal Government Act allows through a direct control bylaw that you can subdelegate as council certain portions of the development permit process to either the Municipal Planning Commission or to the development officer, depending on the situation. In this case, it was deemed appropriate that council be the decision-making authority on this particular one. And then, again, any standard of developments for the uses listed in 17.1 shall be at the discretion of council, because this is a very unique situation, and so it will be up to council based on the development permit application that comes before you later in the meeting as to what standards you wish to apply to that development. So again, there was no comments from adjacent landowners, so I don't know if council has any questions with regards to the process so far.
Are there any questions in regards to the process so far? Remember, the public hearing is the chance for the council to get all the information they need to make the decision when they come out of the public hearing. So, anybody have any questions? No, nothing from council? All right, and I know we have a number of people here and it's always good to see people come out to express ask questions or tell us what their story is. So everyone will get their opportunity to ask questions or to give information.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Dickinson. I am the husband of the new postmaster in Rolling Hills, Annette. She apologize for not being able to be here today herself as she was working. So she asked me to speak on her behalf. So, as a background, Annette applied for the postmaster position in October, and as per the Canada Post employment application process, on October 31st, she interviewed for the position, and November 6th, she was pleased to find out that she was a successful candidate. And December 2nd, officially became the postmaster. This position in Rolling Hills is location provided position, which means that the postmaster must provide location. And along with that, heating, lighting, cleaning, routine general maintenance, snow removal, municipal taxes, and necessary property and liability insurance coverage. We did consider a lot of things when she did become postmaster, and the one that we went with made the most financial sense to us, and at the same time allow us to keep the postal service in Rolling Hills, which we feel was and is of great importance to the community.
Thank you, Bill. Council questions? Kelly?
I guess my question is, who owns the property that, I think I know the answer, but I just want clarity on that. Who owns the property that the move-in building will be situated?
The property, I believe, belongs to the County of Mill. Is that not right? Is that correct? Oh, sorry, the Rolling Hills Community Hall, then, I guess. Yep. So.
Other questions? Tracy?
Are the building is already in place and the post office is in operation already, like at the new location?
It is. Time wasn't really on our side. To be in operation at the old location wasn't an option for us beyond November the 30th. So we had to make a decision to go ahead and move in a skid shack.
Emery?
I guess the question is for Diane. If Rolling Hills or Canada Post ever decides to go to mailboxes, then the zoning is in place and they can do it at that location if they choose to do so?
Correct. The zoning sits on as an invisible layer on top of the land. So again, it's not a separate title. It would just be a location in which that type of use would be allowed. Again, if they looked at a different location, again, we'd be looking at that. And again, what zoning would be appropriate for that. And again, there's always a possibility if this, changes location, it could be zoned back by the community hall to Parks and Recreation if they so choose to. So again, this is very site specific in that little tiny location as to what can occur on that parcel.
And just to make sure I understand, the building is a movable building.
That is correct. If Canada Post ever decided to pull out the postmaster position, we can remove the building very easily.
Hopefully to remove the postmaster position would not be a decision that would happen to Rolling Hills, but one never knows. Anything else from council? Kelly?
So Diane, obviously things got moved ahead for service delivery reasons. Are there any repercussions in the bylaw for that type of thing?
Again, that falls under the enforcement section of our land use bylaw. So again, if it was the choice of the municipality to pursue enforcement of someone who did any development prior to an application being approved,
that would be a consideration. At this time, what administration did was take an application and move it through the process. So again, if something has occurred between one process and another process, that again would be at the direction of administration or council in this case, if you become the development authority on it, on whether or not you would want to impose any enforcement on them.
You bet.
Follow up on that. I'm not suggesting that. I see postal service as an essential service, and unfortunate that an agreement wasn't able to be reached with the old location, but that happens, and I just wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
Tracy?
What is the power source to that building, and how is that? Oh, was there permits that needed, or is there permits that need to be obtained for those service hookups?
The power source is coming from the community hall. So our idea was that to make the most financial sense for us, we would share some utilities with our community center, with a public building in Rolling Hills. And they did agree to allow us to hook up, and we have permits that will be applied for sure.
Kelly?
Okay, so this is getting muddier. So interesting. So is the plan in place to make this viable for the Rolling Hills organization? Because we certainly wouldn't want that to be an expense to that organization, who are all volunteers operating that, correct?
Well, my wife and I are the proprietors of the building. We take full responsibility for any extra utilities that will be incurred, and we will be making a monthly contribution towards that to the community hall. So, does that answer your question?
Emery?
Is it possible to have your own meter so you know exactly what your cost is?
Well, to have our own meter would increase the expenses very, very much. So, which would make this almost not really a viable thing to do. So, we thought, as a service to the community, that we would be, and they have allowed us to be able to do this. So, I'm not sure what it costs to put in services if we were just a standalone, but I'm pretty sure it would be very expensive.
So how did that work with the first post office? Did they pay their own utilities?
They did, and when the post office first moved into that building, it was already a pre-existing store, I should say. And so eventually the store part of it closed, but they already owned the building, so the services were already there.
Other questions? Diane?
I guess one comment, and again, that as you may move forward to a development permit this afternoon, later in the meeting, that is one condition. And again, there may be not the requirement for a entirely separate service, but you can meter a service within a home, or within, say, for example, you have a secondary suite, you can have an internal meter that'll determine that, and it's not the same cost as a full entire new service. So again, that may be something council may want to be considering at that time when it comes to that, the particulars of the development. Again, to remember, this is suitability of site and those types of things.
Wayne?
Is that really our concern, how the utilities are paid? this hearing is for of land use bylaw. How they want to make an agreement with the community hall is not really our concern, is it?
And again, at this portion, as I said, this is suitability versus the details of the development. And again, when you get into the details of development, servicing is one of them. And if there is concern about how one business is hooking into another business, that is open for consideration at the development permit stage.
Any other questions from council? Kelly?
Just the other Rolling Hills residents, my question would be everybody, whether they're in favor or opposed to this. Can I ask that question, Madam Chair? They've come for a reason, so I would like to...
There's a process here that we will hear that.
Okay.
If you're talking about the people gathered here, yes, yeah, that's coming. Anything else for Mr. Dickinson? Okay, is there anyone else here that wants to speak on behalf of Mr. Dickinson and his project?
Good morning, my name is Dave Stalber. I'm sit on the board of directors for the Rolling Hills Community Hall. During this whole process, we've actually had 2 total town committee or town meetings where everybody in the community came out to find out what's going to be happening with our post office. And the first one, we had over 75 people attend. Various options were discussed and decided. And at one point, one of the suggestions was to move in an ATCO trailer and have it retrofitted to be a post office. Before that actually came to fruition, another person had stood up and said they were willing to buy the previous post office if the person would agree on a price. So we left it at that. So he was going to go see his banker to get things arranged. He went and did that, but unfortunately it didn't fly with the bank. So that option was out the window. So the next option was with an ATCO trailer moved in. So then in order for that to happen, then we had a hall board meeting. And during the first meeting, it was unanimous that everybody agreed that, yeah, we need this, we want this, and there was nobody against the idea. Then we had a community hall board meeting. The hall board sat down and we went through what the options may or may not be. And again, it became unanimous that the community hall was in favor of this option, to have an ATCO building moved in to the north side of our building. We tie in whatever utilities may or may not be used. The building itself was almost a self-sustained building with its own water and heat and stuff. The only thing you needed, I think, was the power at this point. And if need be, we can pursue any other utilities that may come forward. At this point, it's only the power. Then we had a second, after that whole board meeting, we had another community meeting, and again, 50 or 60 people showed up, and we advised them of what had transpired in the last few weeks as far as the old post office was out, the ATCO trailer was in, and how does everybody feel about it, and it was unanimous, everybody was in favor. And at that point, no one had spoke up against it.
How many people are on your hall board? I'm curious. Your actual board.
There's 4 directors on the community hall board.
Okay. Anything else for Mr. Stalber? Questions for Mr. Stalber? Remember, this is your opportunity to get the information. No? Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else speaking in support of this? All right. Is there any other people speaking against the motion? And if so, this is your chance. Well, that just became very easy. one never knows when there's a large group of people gathered exactly what's going on in the community. So that's great that you're all here to support the notion of the new post office, I think. All right. Anything else from council? From staff? From ex-councillors? Can you hear us, Mr. Daniels? Well, that makes me think that your hearing is good and all is well in this building. If there is anything, nothing else, then we need to move out of this public hearing. Anne Marie makes a motion to move us out. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. So we are considering second reading of the bylaw then, correct? Any discussion? Or Ellen? Ellen.
I was going to make the motion for second reading.
All right. All in favor or question? Discussion? Kelly?
My question is around liability. It goes back to operations again, and I didn't want to ask another operations question. So the land is owned by the County of Newham, is that correct?
The Hall Board.
Hall Board, so it's titled to the Hall Board. So the Hall Board has plenty of liability insurance in place to operate such a public. I guess they would because they have a community hall. So I'm answering my own question. I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I think we have the answer to that question. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is carried. And for third reading, final reading, Hubie moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. So we're good. Are we? That's everything under. Yeah.
The rezone is completed, and there is still because council is the development authority, there is a permit to be dealt with regards to this as well. And I believe it is 10-1 in your package.
There it is. Yes, it is 10-1. So we'll go to that and get this done up before we recess for lunch. Item 10, under administrative business. I was looking under planning and development, and here it is. Item 10.1 for the development permit, the installation of moved-in building to be used as a post office in the direct control district now. So, Shanley.
Development permit 2018098 is to install a moved-in building with a deck and a ramp to be used as a post office. The parcel is split zoned, which was just approved. They're not asking for any variances. The post office will connect to the existing utilities at the hall. The access to the post office will be off 3rd Street. The applicants will be installing a wheelchair ramp to the south side of the deck, which will be lined up to the side of the hall in order to connect to the existing sidewalk beside the building. There will be no outside storage. The post office will be open for business from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., but the doors will remain unlocked 24 hours a day to allow residents to pick up mail and drop off mail. There was no issues or concerns from staff. There was one response from adjacent landowners, which was the Rolling Hills Advisory response, and we're recommending approval with conditions.
Diane.
I just maybe want to make one clarification. You can see there's conditions of development approval A, that it's effective January 10th, 2019. In this case, it said there's a 21-day appeal period. Any development approved when council is the development authority, has no appeal. So it will be effective immediately upon that.
That's the most powerful I've felt in the whole time I've been on council. We don't have a lot of direct control times. Anything else? We did talk about conditions, or is there concerns? No? All right. Anne-Marie.
Make a motion to approve.
Anne-Marie is making the decision or motion to approve this permit. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Good job, Rolling Hills. Yes. Thank you for expediting this to make sure that you keep a post office. Nice to see you, ex-councillor. First time, yes, and Merry Christmas to all of you. I think everyone is back, and so we're going to get down to business again, and we're going to go to item 9, Ag Service Business, and Calgary Stampede Farm Family Award is the first thing listed there.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't think this is a new program to anybody. We have a wonderful list of producers that certainly are deserving of a Farm Family Award. I guess it just comes down to picking which one we want for our 2019 recipient.
The agri-food thing new or not?
Relatively. I think just the way they explained it in the letter is a little bit new, because they still, when you read it, it just, and sorry, I can't remember, but it just breaks it out a little bit more, so you can include other industries as well.
So, like eventually, do you think the new distillery in Rolling Hills would be worthy of nomination?
Well, they are actually a primary producer as well, so they definitely could.
Well, I was just thinking when I was reading this morning, so what do we have that would bridge and sort of make it a bit different? But I hadn't thought of anything until just now with them.
We have a few, and we awarded our, was that 2016 or 17 to Sprague's?
Right.
Bonnie and Greg Sprague.
Yeah.
So that's an agri-food type industry.
Yes.
But also primary production on the other side too. So.
Right.
So yeah, so I guess I attached the previous winners, because that's always important to see who, when, and where, and then kind of our future considerations list that we had. And Brian had also mentioned, being that the agri-food stuff, we could go even to somebody like Philpott Honey or Scandia Honey too, I guess is another one.
Yeah.
So that's another industry we haven't considered before as well. So,
Brian.
Well, and just to add to that Philpott suggestion, and I seem to remember in that little Newell Connect video that Economic Development created, they are they do that 30-second thing where they're promoting our area and their business. I'd have to look at it again. It's been a few weeks since I looked at it, but somewhere in there it said something, they mentioned something about being 100-year farm family. So I guess I put that forward because if it happens to be that this is their 100th year, I would really like them to be considered. But, if not, if
find the video now.
Yeah, actually. Maybe Ariana can throw it up on the screen. Oh, Newell Connect. Is it Newell Connect?
Newell Proud.
Newell Proud.
Newell Proud, yeah.
Is that Div 7 or 8? Okay. So they, 2 years ago, Hubert and Wally Romans, and I don't think it matters at all when people were last.
That's not part of that consideration. I guess that was the only thing I thought, is if it does happen to be that 100th year, it would be pretty special. But
totally agree.
Without that, it's not a big deal for me, and I don't think it would be a big deal for them. But and you know, the other thing too is Dale's, you know, still very healthy and active, and you know,
I think it's a neat.
that's Alan and Glenn's dad. Their grandfather started the business way back.
And the generational thing has sort of been something in past nominations that we
and the fact
tried
that they
to
are
consider.
very involved in their community too, like just over and over again. So.
Look at that technology. Let's do it. Let's watch it quick.
Yeah, it'll be quick. How many seconds are these? Yeah. Yeah.
Honey on a good year. Philpott Honey has been in the county of Newell for nearly 100 years. Philpott Honey produces honey. We do custom pollination for the hybrid canolas in the area. The honey industry in Alberta is noted to be one of the world's best producing provinces for consistency and pure honey. One bee can produce about a teaspoon of honey on a good year. A hive can consist of 150,000 bees in each colony. About 150,000 hives, they'll probably need 2 kilograms a day of their own product.
Anybody can come to our farm and buy honey, and at this time of year it's fresh, so we can fill buckets right out of the taps.
Philpott Honey is very proud to be able to work in the county of Newell and to provide services and to let people enjoy our honey that works with powder.
Little change from grain and cows. So we need to formalize that, right?
Yeah, it's like from my side of the table, all I need is somebody to make a motion.
Okay. Yeah. Brian.
Todd was giving me the stink eye, like, get on with this. So I'd make a motion to support approaching them, because I haven't talked to them, so to be considered for the our nomination for next year's 2019's Calgary Stampede Farm Family Award. I don't know if I didn't read your motion, Ariana, or Todd.
We'll just go with the recommended action.
Okay, sounds great.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Do we need backup in case they don't? Some years haven't we had backup, or we've got lots of time so to readdress this, right?
Yeah, we have one more meeting beginning of January, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll call them as soon as I can, and then we can pick somebody else that goes the other way.
Sounds good. All right, that's done, and we have these resolutions, and I have to say I was sort of more impressed than usual. They're brief, to the point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think solid recommendations too, which is one of the parts of our Ag Service Board resolutions that I always get a little bit disappointed in. We don't often ask for what we're actually looking for, and I thought these were, like you say, quite well done and asked for very specific things to be considered. So The strychnine one we seen in, where the heck did we go?
Alderside.
Oh, yeah. So that one I think it is relatively self-explanatory. I believe we all still need liquid strychnine. And one interesting thing I found out talking to some guys from the north, they don't actually use that much strychnine in the north. They don't have the same gopher populations as we do in the south. So a lot of the pressure actually comes from the southern part of the province and not the entire province of Alberta. So that was kind of news to me. I didn't realize that. Yeah, different soil characteristics, absolutely, yeah. And they probably have more problems with moles and things like that in the darker soil zones. So if it's okay, I'll just put a check mark beside that one unless we have some discussion. No, but you guys usually are. You're trying to, I can BS for hours. You know what I have to do? I got to work when I get back out of here, you know.
Todd, has, like, we wrote the letters and stuff, and has the decision been made? No.
I have not heard anything back. We had a lady talk to us at our training beginning of December, Andrea Sawatsky from PMRA, and she said they were still going through all the correspondence. So I suspect there was quite a bit. Saskatchewan had quite a bit as well, and hopefully.
Okay. I think we're definitely supportive of that, yes.
All right. The next one is on the Wildlife Predator Compensation Program Enhancement. This is one that I thought, we've talked about the predator compensation many times at the Ag Service Board level, and this one is, I thought, a great idea, at least in its simplest form, that producers can take pictures and, you know, document some of the evidence on their own. We talk about apps quite often, and there might be an opportunity to have some sort of app that they could submit their information from it, because we know that governments in general are stretched pretty thin, and the Fish and Wildlife officers aren't able to be there when they need to be there. So this might be an opportunity to take some of that out of the picture. You know, you show up, you got a dead cow, you might not have seen the grizzly bear there, but you see the evidence of it, you can take the pictures, you can fill the, you know, that. So I thought that was a really good idea. And something that probably should have been considered when technology was, you know, getting better and better. So, yeah.
It's a perfect example of technology at its best.
Absolutely.
It works that day for you, but.
Yeah, and I don't know where these problems stem from. I assume it's not just on flatland forestry. I assume there's some high country, and you know, where it's not necessarily easy for a Fish and Wildlife officer to get to. So if you add hours and hours and days to get to something, that isn't really reasonable. So if you're already there, you might as well collect the information. So
Absolutely.
I thought that was a good idea. Everybody
Any
else?
disagreement? I think it's smart. Like I said, if it works. Perfect. Third one.
All right, the dead stock removal one. I believe there was a government program at one point in time, just right after BSE, where I don't know if the entire dead stock removal was paid for, but there was certainly some money back, right? If you had a cow that died, they would pay for the rendering, or half of the rendering company. So, and then that kind of went away. And it just sounds like maybe in the central part of the province, they're getting maybe some more issues with not being able to get rid of them, or maybe it's not cost effective to get rid of them. So they're just burying them on site. So.
Any issues with this one? Wayne?
I think this is just the cost of doing business. And we get to the point where we keep trying to shove everything, get compensation for it. Well, my opinion is get out of the business then. This is just the cost of doing business. And, I'm not in favor of it, but that's just me.
Well, we could listen to the discussion, because it is a cost. Ellen?
Todd, I was going to ask you, I think that diseases in cows or what have you, let's say they're buried, that can last for a long time, can it not? Doesn't Alberta have some regulations that you can actually not bury dead animals?
No, burial is a valid way to get rid of your dead stock. Yeah, it has to be under so much cover, or it's their best management practice, their recommendations that it's a certain amount of cover, and I think it's even 18 inches of cover. Probably should have said that to the whole world, but I believe that's what it is. And that's a good way to get rid of it. Incineration is another one, but you have to do it properly. You got to make sure that you have a fire that's going to burn hot enough. You have to make sure that you do it on a proper day and all the rest of it. So burying is just typically the easiest solution.
Unless it's 40 below.
Unless it's really cold. Yeah. The other thing I always struggle with when we do cost sharing programs where the government pays half and the producer pays half, sometimes the people that are offering that service will increase their costs. And then it's a wash anyway. So if it currently costs $200 and the company decides, well, now it costs $300, you know what I mean? That always makes me question if it's worth it or not.
Another ask for money. But is it okay if we just listen to it? See what the problems are that they think they need this?
Works for me.
Okay. Carbon credits, past years.
Yeah, carbon credits in our area, honestly, we haven't had a huge uptake on it because there's quite a bit of paperwork involved, and if you have smaller acres, it's not a large amount of money that you're getting out of it. But maybe I know some of our larger producers took advantage of the carbon credit payouts, and I think on a yearly basis, they still in the cropping you can still get some money for trapping that carbon below ground. But when we heard, it's funny, we just heard the guy talk or 2 weeks ago, I guess, and it's less than $1 an acre in the cropping. So it's not, like I said, it's not a big uptake on the program just because it's not a really big value. The one thing, and Clearwater does mention it, there is no money for grasslands and forestry. It's only for cropping. So they just didn't have I believe they didn't have a good way of measuring how much is being stored, so they didn't have a great way of coming up with a dollar value of what it would be worth. So just looks like they're asking for it to be revisited and maybe trying to figure out what the value of that carbon being stored is.
Which would probably please some people who get annoyed about carbon tax when they talk about the prairies and all the trees and the grassland.
Mm-hmm.
So it's worth an argue.
I think so.
Yep. Okay, fresh water multi-stake committee.
Yeah, I think Brazeau County's raised this one a few times, and maybe they have more fracking that goes on in their municipality. I'm not exactly sure, but they certainly have raised this concern before, just about using too much fresh water in the fracking process. And I'm not, like I said, I don't know everything about Brazeau County or where their water sources come from, or if they're, using aquifer water. So I think there's some good stuff to listen to. I don't believe, I think industry would listen if there was a better way to do it. And they probably have been. Yeah. But maybe there's more work to be done. I'm not sure having a committee look at it is a bad thing. I believe there's always, room for improvement. And if you have industry and government and landowners in the same room, I think there's a wonderful opportunity to come up with some good ideas. So maybe this stakeholder committee is a good idea, and it might not cost a whole bunch.
I was sure that they quit that practice, but
using
not
fresh
that
water.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be good to listen. Some of us would be happy if there was lots of fracking going on.
Well, I believe there is a company that's been in talks with us about using water as well for some fracking in our area. So, I mean, it's obvious that there is some appetite for it. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was a relatively large amount of liters that they were looking for.
Did you just head them over to the idea, or did it have to be potable water?
We said, come on in, the county is open for business and we're ready to work with you.
I know, but the EID owns all the water.
You very well could be right, but they asked us first.
I am right.
Trying to be political over here. So I think, like again, I think this one's worth a listen, and having a committee get together and talk about things never hurts.
You bet.
Open lines of communication is good.
Yes, and then question.
One thing I've never understood in that process is why they actually need fresh water. Like, I think it's just a lubricant, isn't it? Or maybe I don't. I'm not a driller. I've never been. What's the requirement? Because I mean, they have, like Lionel could speak to it, but I mean, they have what do you call it? The water that comes out of the landfill. Can't I think of the name? Leachate. Leachate. Like that. If you just need a lubricant, I mean, that'd be awesome. But I don't know. And the EID, I don't think owns that water.
There's been. I'll tell you about it.
It likely just comes down to availability and quantity, right? So if there's not enough quantity there, I mean, it's like obviously available, but there might not be enough quantity. So
I think a big part of it is the transportation, right?
Yeah.
So they have fresh water that's close, or relatively close to all well sites, and rather than trucking water for 50 miles or greater, it's just more economical to use the closest source. And
if it's winter, it's summer, the canals are a great source.
Dugouts.
That's all the ID water. You guys don't believe me. I can tell. We'll talk about it later.
We could build more pipelines.
That's true. There's fewer canals. Yeah. All right, that'll be another good one to get more information on. STEP program, and this one came from the south.
Yeah, this one came from the south as well, and I think there was some great discussion around it there. That wasn't met with a lot of restriction, I didn't think. So I guess support our southern brothers and sisters.
Ooh, that was quick.
Trying to be gender neutral.
Sounds good.
So that was pretty easy.
Yeah, now we need some voting reps.
Yeah, that never hurts. They didn't ask for it. Maybe it's an old practice. Maybe we don't do that anymore, but I thought we always had to have 2 members from the municipality that voted on behalf of our group. So as long as there's at least 2 people going, we shouldn't have a problem finding 2 people.
We signed up for that already.
Not yet. It's the next thing on the agenda.
I think we have hotel rooms or something.
We do.
That's what it is.
Yes, we do. I anticipated everybody was going to want to go because we have put together a rock star show. Rock star. Did you guys take a look at that agenda? That's going to blow your mind.
I didn't.
She was happy to do it. Yeah. And really inexpensive. Like really inexpensive. At least in comparison to other stuff.
Okay, next item then, Todd.
All right, so here's the conference. I think Together Towards Tomorrow is the perfect theme. It actually came out of Don Hogan from Special Areas. He was driving home from our meeting in Lethbridge, which for Don is about a 4.5-hour drive, and he came up with it about Hannah. So, you know what? It was a great idea. It really speaks to what we do in the county with all our partnerships and working together and trying to, promote all that kind of jazz. So I think it works out well. I believe our speakers hit the target. We have a couple that probably don't, but the rest of it, I think we'll be open our eyes to things. We talk a lot about cows and crops in general, and then we actually talk about we have the guys coming in from the Plant Protein Alliance, which is kind of a new thing, or at least new to me. I'm not a plant eater by any stretch of the imagination, but some great ideas, and that's a southern region as well. The shotgun style sessions, that was just what we called, that we had an open half hour. It actually got filled up. The recycling group, the Ag Plastics Recycling Group, they just got announced the $750,000 grant to actually start putting some programming together. Tammy Schwass, I believe is her last name, is going to come and tell us about that and what they're planning, and hopefully we can have some great discussions around that, because I think at least kind of from our borders north, there's some opportunity for some better recycling there. And then we stuck Doug McCauley from the province in there as well. He's going to give us a little update. We held him to 10 minutes, so hopefully everybody appreciates that. And then, yeah, I think, like I say, I think it's a great agenda. I was obviously on the agenda committee, so I don't want to hear anything otherwise.
That's funny.
They asked me if I would put together the what do they call those when you get the feedback forms? I said, heck no, I don't care. I think it's a great show, and I don't care what you think. And then Thursday morning, I think is going to be wonderful. And if you can, and you're going, I absolutely recommend staying around for Thursday morning. This Carlo Dade is full of energy, and is really passionate about the international trade. And then Sherilyn Nagel is great speaker. We heard her a couple weeks ago. She talked about social license, which is how governments tell everybody we're trustworthy. But this presentation sounds really good, and she talks about that social license a bit within it, but the policy is not just politics. And I think she talks more about policy on a provincial level. She's on a few boards and a few committees, and she talks about lots of that stuff. So I think it's really great and a good way to cap off. So they're about the only two we gave an hour presentation for. So we're hoping it's really engaging conference.
Thank you. So you need a list of who's going.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Who's not going? Clarence and Lionel are absent.
Lionel is going. I know that part.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking for Clarence.
It's a good time of year to get away from home anyways. So January is always such wonderful weather. Yeah, that's true. I leave that in the capable hands of my wife, who reminds me every day how much she hates it. So I don't leave too often. I might have to find some of those, Wayne. Well, sounds good. I will sign everybody up. Unless I hear otherwise very shortly.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. And like I said, Clarence isn't here. So, yeah, all good.
Perfect.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you.
Have a good holiday season. Are you traveling?
No, we're staying local.
Nice.
Yeah, you never know what the weather's going to be like, so we kind of decided that, and so the farthest we're going is Strathmore.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy.
Yeah, thank you.
Lane?
Item 10.5 on the agenda is one that we might want a little bit of input from Todd on as well.
Perfect, thank you. Yes. Item 10.5, the change in scope of site maintenance responsibility.
So this one originates from revisions that have been underway for some time on lease agreements with community organizations that are operating facilities on county-owned land. For the most part, the leases have passed the responsibility for grounds maintenance back to those organizations. A couple of years ago, we had the Rolling Hills Ag Society request an amendment to the lease that was in place there for the operation of the Rolling Hills campground. They wanted the county to take over responsibility for mowing, maintaining the grounds there for the campground facility. The EID Historical Park Association, when we sent out a revised agreement for them to consider, asked for a meeting. They came in, we had a discussion on a number of things, and one of them that was included in that conversation was a question as to whether or not the county would be in a position to take over mowing the large grass areas within the historical park, and then also to provide spraying for weed control purposes, saying that it would certainly reduce some of the pressure that they're facing as an organization. We've had that discussion with Ag Services. They're certainly in a position to provide that service. it is going to, I guess, confirm the precedent that was set with Rolling Hills. And before we go ahead and make that change to the lease agreement, we just want council to be aware that we anticipate that there is going to likely be other community groups submitting similar requests in the future. And for now, we can absorb those requests without a significant increase in resources, but anticipate that if it continues, that it is going to have an operational impact upon the organization. And we just, I guess, wanted to have a discussion with council to make sure that we're not moving ahead with something that council wants us to reconsider before we make the decision. So that's the summary of the issue. I know that Ag Services, Todd, would be in a position to speak to the actual impact that it is going to have. But there are certainly other organizations that we do anticipate that there will be similar requests from in the future.
Todd, impact to your area?
Yeah, I threw it out to kind of Will for the mowing side of things and Catherine for the spraying side. We figure we can, you know, just like most weed control programming usually takes a couple of years to get things where you want them to be to maintain a good level of grass to weed mix. And I don't know that they've had a lot of help in that area for a while. So there's certainly going to be maybe a couple years or a couple passes that are going to be a little harder, but it's only a couple years. So after that, we should be able to maintain it relatively easily. And even these first couple years, Catherine was confident we could do it all in less than a day. So less than a day works out, you know, around $1,000 for machinery and labor, and probably in that couple $100 range for chemicals. So not a large resource on the spraying side. And then the mowing, providing that they don't want anything extraordinary out of our current system, our current schedule, we're looking at a couple times a month going down there. They don't irrigate, just like we don't irrigate, so it should work out on the same schedule. And when we go down there with all of our equipment at the same time. So currently, they go down to Scandia, and it takes roughly 6 hours. With the addition, we figure we can still do it all in the day, with maybe a half-hour drive back on overtime. So it's not going to impact us any more than that, we don't think anyways. So it doesn't really get out of our realm. And I think, and that's just the one instance, you know, Lane outlined it, I believe, in the RFD, all the other areas that might come on board eventually. And I believe we've kind of known this for a while, that volunteerism is great, but it's dwindling. And not everybody has the same level of volunteerism as they did before. So I think we've set ourselves up with the right equipment and the right systems to be able to handle these things. The one that would really throw a wrench in us is the Lake Newell Resort. If those condominium associations ever went to county-owned or maintained properties, that's a different level of service because they're well-fertilized, well-irrigated areas, and that's a once-a-week thing. So that takes some resources for sure. But the rest of them, I think we could absorb relatively easily. When it comes down to it, not next year.
No, and when the ask comes, because, I mean, it's a pretty efficient system if there's local volunteers doing it right now. So we may as well let them continue.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the size of equipment that we have the luxury to own. You know, when we rock in with an 11-foot mower or two 11-foot mowers, you're done in no time. Where some of our volunteer organizations are using 48-inch mowers or less, and that poor summer student is going back and forth. And I mean, we're working right beside them, and we're done. And
yeah.
you can, and we do. We're really good at, if it says County of Newell on the title, we'll often do extra, and we're happy to do so for the benefit of our ratepayers. But you know, when it comes down to things like Scandia, we've helped them out before the Earl Taylor days. Every year they let us know, and we go in and we make sure the entire hamlet looks like it's as beautiful as it is. And so it's just an extension of that, I guess.
Yeah. And you've done that all over when there's special events over the years. Anne-Marie?
And that's maybe a rule we can go by then. As long as you can fit it in your schedule with the equipment you have, then we'll just keep dealing with the applications as they come forward. So EID is good for now, and whatever comes up next, we'll look at it.
So that would be option 1, basically. Anne-Marie, you'll make that motion? Right?
I had a question regarding the current situation. Is anybody aware of how the way it's functioning today and who's paying for that? Is it strictly volunteers when it comes to the actual mowing, or what about the chemical and the costs that are taken care of? How are they taken care of? The EID Historical Society, are they an entity that has a bank account that provides that, or like how does it work today?
During the discussion that I had with them, they indicated that they had been using a summer student to provide grounds maintenance in the past, and what they would be doing is simply freeing up that individual to do other work within the park if the county saw fit to take on this additional scope of responsibility. They do have an account, a bank account, so they actively maintain the site. They operate the entire park there, and it's not a local volunteer that is doing the actual grounds maintenance. They do have a hired summer student that takes care of that for them.
I guess with that, I'm curious whether they would make any or partial of their funds available to cover some of our costs, whether it's the chemical costs or something in that nature. I certainly am not suggesting that there'd be a full cost recovery to any extent, but I'm just, when you're asking somebody to take over, is there sort of a relationship that they could cover some of the, especially for the first couple of years, as you said, if there's a weed problem that could be suggested or accommodated?
We can certainly raise that as a possibility and see what kind of response they come back with.
Kelly?
For me, Todd, I just want to caution you to be clear about the service level that you're willing to provide, and make sure it's clear to them what they can expect. Because some people and their lawns, I don't see a museum being any different. Or, now that we have a mower, maybe we'll throw the water on it. That kind of thing. So just a caution or a comment to guard yourself.
Well, those are all great points. And Lane and I talked briefly about it as well. And we have a great system for tracking costs. And it'd be very easy to separate out the costs and see exactly what they are, whether it's chemical, mowing, spraying, equipment, whatever it is. So we get a true number. And if we wanted to do a cost share, that would be relatively easy. And then, I like that, maybe putting that rate in the agreement that the service level would be the same as the rest of the hamlet gets.
So when we took on Rolling Hills, there's no cost share with that? No. Was that volunteers? Can't remember.
I think that they've got a summer student that also provides services for other facilities in Rolling Hills as well.
Well, I guess we could keep track of the costs this summer, at least, and see how it goes. I don't know, because this motion, it would indicate at our cost, basically the way it reads, if it's previous precedent, right? So, Mrs. Motion Maker, what do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, and because we're doing it with Rolling Hills, then if we decide to have the EID museum pay for part of it, then we got to go back to Rolling Hills and do that too. Unless do people pay to go to that museum inside the building? I don't think so, do they? Wayne, do they pay to go into the EID Scandia Museum?
They just have their big day, but they obviously, the student is being paid somehow. They have that food place, right? Oh.
Okay, so let's just do the museum, the EID museum. Let's keep track of our cost for a year, and then you can revisit if we need to.
Yeah. Tracy and Hubie?
I'm just wondering if it's not too much work, should we maybe keep track of Rolling Hills too? Just if it's not, if it's easy enough, then if we do come back to it, then we've got
the numbers
figures right to start.
Yep. Hubie?
They have a function in August. And everybody comes to have supper and there's entertainment, and then they have a live auction. And all the proceeds from the live auction go to help run it. And they get supported quite well at the auction.
Earl Taylor days.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, we'll go with that motion basically with the addition of keeping track of the costs for both Rolling Hills and the EID Historical Parts Society. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Now, is that everything for Todd today?
Unless he's got something else up his sleeve, but I think that's it.
You never know. That's it. Thanks, Todd. Have a good Christmas season. Oh.
And it's regard to that club route thing. Is there a place for a politician there, or would you rather have your staff, and just be honest, because you guys are the frontline people that deal with the club route and the issues out in the field, and so I put my name forward to go, but I want to reconsider if there's somebody else that's more logical to be filling that seat.
When I talked to Autumn, she said there's room for 300 people in the Indus Hall. So there's lots of room for politicians. I think the interesting part about your question is you're right, we deal with it on the ground, but council has to make the policy for us to deal with it. And some of what we're hearing from the Canola Council is, maybe we should be reconsidering policy, and specifically around the restrictions of crop rotation. So that's what we're hearing, and whether I agree with that or not, much of that direction comes from that side of the table. So I think there is some value, absolutely, and Alan signed up as well. So it wouldn't hurt to have some political opinions there. Indus, yeah.
How many staff members are going?
Well, we heard them talk a couple weeks ago, so it's of quite interest to us. So me and Catherine and Will are going to go.
Because when I saw the information, I thought, that this is staff. This is for you. You need to go. You need to be able to identify club route. And so if there's a lot of other farmers in our area that are interested, we should encourage them. And it was publicized on Facebook, so that was a good start. And then as far as councillors, go on your own if you want to learn how to grow your crop, but maybe not as a function of council. Like, you should take your stand.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's all going to be about the agronomics of canola, but there might be some questions that come from that. I think there was some new club root fields identified in Rocky View County, and outside of that, we were really the only ones in the south that had confirmed club routes. So there's just another renewed interest in the south to kind of learn more about it and how to deal with it. And of course, the canola councils are pushing for more canola, so that's why we thought it was of interest.
Wayne.
Actually, I think that should be a function of council, because Todd will bring the information back to us. but I would also like to hear from a couple of councillors what their opinions are. So if Brian and Ellen are going, I think it should be a function of council, because if they can, this is an important thing, in my opinion.
All right, that was a motion that you made there.
Well, I'd go on my own. I don't need to be paid for this. I'm just super interested, so it's fine with me. Whatever council decides, but I'm quite happy just going on my own. I'll probably just jump in the truck with you anyways, Tom.
Well, obviously, if there's room for 300, any of us who are last minute joiners would be welcome. Anne-Marie.
Do you guys receive Alberta Farmer in your mailboxes?
Yep.
Yeah, there's lots of articles in here about rotation, about Richardson no longer giving money to the canola council, and there's green canola seed. So yeah, if you have a chance, read it.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for function of council. Wayne is moving that for Ellen, I'm assuming, because Brian, you aren't into. Okay, for two, for Ellen and for Brian, whether he likes it or not. You don't have to claim it. Yeah, you don't have to claim it. All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right. Any more questions? Like the grandkids. Yeah. To you also. All right. I think we're done page 1 and 2, and that would take us to item 10.6. Oh, wait. Lane?
Yes, we've got the scheduled fees bylaw.
Yes, that's right. Got that.
It's just needing to give second and third reading to that bylaw.
8.3. Item 8.3. So we're at the second reading stage. Someone want to make a motion? You did. Oh, you did the first one, you mean? Tracy has moved. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And for third and final reading, Hubie moves. All in favor? Excuse me. Motion is carried. So that cleans up page 2. And I think we're at 10.6 now. Don't be afraid to correct me. Foothills Little Bow meeting on the 18th of January for our January calendars, which are filling up. Holy smokes. And I guess that's about it for that. Councillor payment sheets, compensation review. Anne-Marie.
Kelly and I added December too, so if you guys had a chance to look at that, then maybe we can approve both November and December.
Good for you guys. Where is that at? In a separate email? Okay. In a separate email? Just this morning, obviously.
Well, I can tell you what the changes were. Tracy, December 6th, the council meeting. 7 should be 8. Wayne has 8.4. I don't know why you started doing that, but that should be 8.5, Wayne. And then you be similar. So those were the only 3, and then Kelly +1. I send it to you, Ariana, right?
When did you send it? I don't have it. What's that?
Said I just automatically delete anything from Anne Marie.
You've got her blocked?
While she's doing that, maybe I could ask, I'll scratch it off this. I was going to ask if when you're doing your sheets and you write, let's say Foothills Little Bow on January 18th, on the meeting side, it automatically populates over to the expense side, right?
Right.
So although that one's maybe a bad example because we all know that's in Lethbridge, but let's think about a meeting that I don't know where it might be, or maybe it travels around.
Yep.
So I just want to remind you to maybe take that population out and write travel to Lethbridge or travel to Midnapore or whatever.
If it's a unique meeting, especially for you. Yeah.
Right.
Makes sense.
Okay, just
That
to help
should be
us.
common sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Last night's meeting ended when? 9? Okay. So it's 6 till 9? Just so you know, the City Hall reception was very poorly attended, so I don't know. It just gets less and less. So not sure the future of that. Okay, so it's in there now, and corrections. So do we can get a motion to do both November and December then? So we just add the rest of December and January, starting with yesterday afternoon, yeah. Alan, did you have your hand up to make that motion? Okay, acceptance. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Checks for payment. Were there any questions regarding checks for payment? If not, we need a motion for acceptance of the payment register. Wayne moves. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Functions of council, are there any? Speaking of functions of council, I responded to the solar people that Alberta and Saskatchewan conference that I was asked to be at, and I looked at the price of the registration. It was like $1,600 if you'd already registered, and it had gone up to. So I responded one night late to the lady who's Adrian Barker, I think is her name, and I said, you know, like for municipal officials, this conference is like out of our line for a day and a half, I think it is, or 2 days, short day and 2 days. So immediately, like I think I was doing this at 1 o'clock in the morning, I get a response back from her, which is really creepy. And she says, oh, you're already signed up and registered, it's free. Oh, yeah. Brass. That didn't work. So I think I'm going to email her now and say, we don't usually stay at the Westin. see if she'll pay for that. That might be pushing it. Okay. It was funny. Fuel procurement.
Well, good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
Over the past number of years, we visit with you every year about fuel purchase, and we've heard a number of concerns in the past about, can we potentially carry every fuel supplier's cards? Can we figure out how to offer this up to everybody? We've amended our practice in the past from being a margin of profit to who has the best serviceability in the region for us, and so on and so forth. And every year the contract expires December 31st. Jeff recently got into discussion with RMA Fuel, formerly PFA Fuel, and discovered that all of the fuel suppliers that bid into the RMA Fuel provision program, we are capable of getting cards for. The reluctance on this at first was that, well, if we get into that, we're going to get invoices from ESSO, we're going to get invoices from so-and-so, and they're all going to be in different formats, and we're going to spend a lot of administrative time pulling this together versus if we do it once, we're done, we make our automated system work for us, and it flows. It was nice enough to learn that RMA Fuel does the invoicing for all of the vendors, so any fuel that we do buy, whether it would be from ESSO, from Petrocan, from UFA currently, Co-op is not part of the program yet. RMA gets their invoices, RMA puts it into one invoice, and that is what we receive. So that is currently what we're receiving because we are purchasing through RMA Fuel, which is currently through Petrocan, so the invoicing process would not change. Our workflows with automation in Laserfiche would not change. And with that, all we would need to do is ask for the number of fuel cards we require, whether it's for 2 vendors, for 3 vendors, or if Co-op comes in for all 4, and all staff or all fleet vehicles will be equipped to carry all of those fuel cards. The challenging part with it is cost. Who has the cheapest fuel this week? Where do we want to fuel up from? And next week we need to reconfirm that, and then we're going to shift over and stuff. But in working with trying to reach some of those things of council, with spreading some of the money around, getting service from various vendors and whatnot, we thought we would at least ask that RMA is going through their new contracts when they run out at the end of March, so they will have an understanding of whether Co-op is going to get in with them or not, because they've been working really close with Co-op to try to get them in as well. And if they do that, then we would have access to 4 fuel cards. Unfortunately, the one thing that we do understand is that ESSO, the only ESSO service station in our region, is actually the Emmys ESSO out in Bazzano with a card lock. So really it would be the other 3 suppliers of Co-op, UFA, and Petrocan that we have more access to, but we could carry all 4 cards. So we're asking if we can just stick with RMA Fuel until such time as they renew their fuel procurement process and see if Co-op gets in. Even with that, though, we could ask to have all 3 vendors' cards provided to us in January and begin a new process of potentially seeing fuel consumed from the various suppliers available to us. When it comes down to bulk fuel for our 8 remote grader sites, 6 of them have their own fuel tanks on site. The other 2, the one local here in Brooks, fuels up in town, and the Bazzano one currently fuels up in Bazzano to reduce the remote fuel tanks that we have with some of the theft that we've experienced in the past, which at least it's been minor. But we would have 6 of those, and we would just do a phone around by the grader operators or whatever when they know that they need fuel, and whoever has the lowest fuel price for the day, we would ask them to have it delivered within a 2-day window or something like that and get those tanks filled up. So we put all that together, and we're looking at County Council provide direction to purchase fuel through RMA services. Additionally, make a request to RMA to provide fuel cards for UFA for each unit operated by the county, as well as any other fuel providers that submit to RMA's April RFP process. So if we can get into that and council supports doing that annually, then we're open doors with all fuel providers, and maybe we don't need to have this conversation every year, but it is a large ticket budget item, so I'm not sure where council would like to go with it. Thoughts and questions?
I think it's fantastic. You know, as in previous years that I've been an advocate for having the most logical system, and I think this caters to that. I mean, you got equipment that's going out towards my area, the Duchess area and Gem, or Patricia, on the way back, it makes more sense for them to stop at UFA. And often, that differential in a few cents is more than eaten up because you're going out of your way to go to a bulk dealership. It's no different than you or I if I've got a co-op and a UFA card lock card in my vehicle when I'm going down the road and I need fuel. It's usually the one that's most convenient. I'm not going to go out of my way by 5 or 10 kilometers to go fuel up because then I've eaten up any savings that I would have appreciated. So I think it's great, and I'd be happy to. Is there a motion you require for this? Okay, I'll make the motion then for option 1.
The recommended action is moved by Councillor Dijon. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Good work, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's good. Just we'll do our best to try to ensure the majority of the units, if not all the units, are fueling up at the vendor that has the lowest price for the week. But if it makes more sense in business practice that you fuel up at the nearest, then that's just what we'll work with our staff. So
it's sort of nice
it's
to
like.
spread it around a bit too, I think. Yeah. So are you traveling over Christmas?
I am out of here at noon tomorrow.
Oh, well, safe travels.
It might be white in the mountains, but I've heard that the lakes still aren't frozen over, so I'm not sure.
We're not crossing the river yet at Finnegan, which is quite a nuisance. So
yeah. There's 8 to 10 inches of ice on Rock Lake right now. So
on Rock Lake, yeah. Well, safe travels and Merry Christmas to you and Marlo and your family.
Thank you. Same to you all. Enjoy. Happy
Thanks,
New Year
Mark.
to you too, because I won't see you in between.
Great. All right. Committee report. Has everybody seen that? Okay. Anne Marie has been very diligent in getting all of her reports out, unlike the rest of us. Bull River Basin, Brian.
Okay, so I didn't just go through and read some of the highlights from the forum that was held last Wednesday the 12th. And one of the, I'll just go, there were a number of presenters. They were all for about a half an hour, as anybody that's attended knows. The High River floodway is built to accommodate 3,000 cubic feet per minute. Their flood of 2013, the maximum was 1,850. And most of the work that was done was just taking out communities, not doing a lot of work with the actual river. It was just taking out communities. And I think $400 million was the price tag for that, buying people's homes. One presentation was on sediment loading on the McLean Creek. There's an excess of 50,000 users seasonally per year, most of them off-highway vehicles. And so it's a big creek, big problem because there's a lot of slope in that area too. So when the sediment gets moving, it keeps moving, and it's really affects the fish. And I know when we were at RMA that Minister Phillips said that was one of her next focuses, was that area of the McLean Creek and doing their mitigation thing. Another interesting thing, and I know we access some of that information, it's Alberta Biodiversity Monitoring Institute, and they have a satellite imagery that they use, and they make that available. And the complexity was astounding, and the whole province is mapped and they can put layers on this thing. It was fascinating to see how extensive it works. The Mestakis Institute had a presentation there, and so you always sit up and listen because of our experience with solar and some of the people that attended that, and how it's going to be spun. And so their project is on the wetlands within the city of Calgary. And what was interesting is, it's easy when they pick on agriculture for destroying wetlands, but since 1962, there were 3,400 square kilometers of wetlands within the city limits. Today, there's 1,850 square kilometers. And so such a reduction is amazing. You know that their sloughs and that have been eaten up by development, but to that amount, it's almost half of what it was since 1962. And sorry, that's not today, that's 2005 data, so it's already 10 years, 13 years old. So who knows what it's today. And so they're doing a study, and it's mostly evolved around citizen science. They're using the pathway system and using citizens to engage and be able to do some of the testing. They're not allowed to take any samples, so they're not actually impacting, the mud or the species that exist around there. That's just observing wildlife and observing and recording and, using your camera to take pictures if you see something, and that gets fed to a database, and they're trying to get more information. It's fascinating when you think of the whole citizen science and how that's evolved within our society, and people that are passionate about it, they don't ever want to see this stopped, and it's a good tool for these associations to use, because the science part of it sometimes gets very costly, but if people care about stuff as volunteers, it suddenly becomes, you can get some data that actually is palatable, and maybe the credibility isn't as good as a scientist taking it, but it all feeds into it, and it collaborates, some of the data that's out there. So. And that's about it. I have another thing that I'd like to add to from the Duchess Ag Society, if I may. And this, I got a call from one of the organizers. They're having a gala on in January, in middle to the end of January. I can't remember the date. I think it's the 19th. And they've done this for a number of years. And they were wondering, and I'm just putting this out for people to digest, and we'll come back, put it on the agenda for January, first part of January, to see if we could provide some matching amounts for strictly for capital reserve for their ag society, for the buildings and some of the things that are there. We have a reserve in our rec budget, and I think we've gone around and tried to figure out where we would best use that in our communities. And I'm just throwing this out to see if that was something. I've approached the village to be a partner in this, and they're going to consider it too. I did that last night, and it's very informal, so I don't know if it's going to get anywhere, but I just want you guys to consider that as far as, if a group is coming out and they're raising money and they're especially attributing it towards capital that they see they're going to need over the next 10 or 20 years, would we be a partner? Would we be open to looking at something to helping with that, rather than seeing them fold and then the community has to take on the full amount? Right now in the Ag Society, it's done primarily all by volunteers, and I'd hate to see that traction be lost. So, anyways, I haven't talked to anybody about it around the table, and so if you guys have suggestions or perspective that I don't, I'd appreciate it. Kevin and Lane, please, if there's hiccups that go along with this, let's look at them and talk about them, and hopefully come up with some solutions.
Question, Brian, so I've got this right. You're saying that this is a fundraiser for capital only?
Well, they
have a capital reserve already, or
they have started capital reserves for each facility. It's actually dedicated capital for each facility, and I think that was the way to go, because they were finding that when they had a capital reserve, one facility would need it, and then they'd satisfy it, and then it'd be gone, and the other ones would say, well, what about me next year? My ice plant or the roof blew off or something like that. So, and as you guys know, if you're involved with ag societies, you know how it works, and community organizations, there's never enough money. But I think this is a good process. They have some astounding people that are part of this. Carrie, she's a pretty smart lady, and I think she's come up with this model. And she isn't the one that approached me, but I guess when I was approached, I thought, well, it doesn't fit. We provide funding. It's operational type stuff. We have a rec reserve that we've created. Is this something that we should consider it's not a gift. It's like, well, we're matching what you're doing. It's, and if there's other groups and other communities that say, well, we're going to go out and it's going to be dedicated towards capital, I think we should consider it, but I also want to have the thoughts around the table too. So. It'll never be enough, but like they've set a goal of $400,000 for 10 years that they're going to need, and that's just based on they've evaluated their facilities and said that's the minimum we're going to need over the next 10 years, and so their goal is to get there, and I think this is one of those things they're going to hopefully do.
So Brian, if they do a fundraiser towards capital and they made $20,000 that night, then we as a county would match it with 20,000 keep it in our own reserves, earmarked for them.
Well, I guess my initial thing was that the village would have to be part of that equation too. It wouldn't be, again, it's just a discussion, right? Nobody's put any hard numbers to it. I think the previous one they raised 30,000, but I wouldn't be acceptable if the village wasn't part of that same mentality, because it does affect them. My comment to the councillors last night is if the Ag Society doesn't get into trouble and folds, you're going to get 3 facilities and the golf course is in the county. So how do we look at that long term?
I know where you're coming from. I'm just wondering if we have to hand over that money as soon as they do their fundraiser, or whether we earmark it and keep it.
Well, and that's a great point. And I don't think they'd be opposed to that as long as they know there's that dollars. I haven't had that talk with them. That's why I'm bringing it to council here. So, but those are all great suggestions. You guys all are involved in different parts of your community, so maybe you have different aspects that you bring to the table that fit better for you, that can be part of this equation, because it's not for Dutchess, it's for everybody, right? Like that's the way you have to look at it, or the Ag Society, I should say.
Yeah, well, we'll have the discussion.
Well, my counselor to the left here is going to talk about joint services, and I said I'd pinch hit when she was done.
So yeah, on Tuesday, we had our joint services. I just emailed it out this morning. I forgot to send you the notes earlier, and I had to send it twice because the attachment didn't go the first time. So you'll have everything in your package. Coming up in January 14th, there's going to be a workshop for recreation and parks, and it's a workshop for elected officials. And Greg, I don't know how you see his Krishke. He was the mayor of Leduc. He is the speaker for that. And so that's an all-day, starts at 9 o'clock. And that'll be coming out. They're going to be sending information out to us later on from the city. It was January 14th.
And who is that aimed at? You said councillors,
just for elected officials. And it's a workshop for recreation and parks. Mm-hmm.
And I know that we talked about it here, and there wasn't much interest in it, but the city has obviously gone ahead.
Yeah, they've gone ahead with it, yeah. Okay. What else? I guess, and then we're continuing on with the handy bus trial, and how many trips? It'll be the kind of, I guess, facilitated through physicians, and they're going to be setting up hopefully one day a week where the handy bus will go from Brooks to Medicine Hat for our ratepayers, and it'll be to take them to their appointments, medical appointments and stuff. What else do we talk about? Oh, the economic development team showed us the video. We saw the footpath honey, and they've gone through and they've made quite a few of these videos on different businesses and stuff. So it's if you have a chance, watch them. They're actually pretty good. It's on the Newell Proud Facebook page. If everybody's on Facebook. And then we did. What else was there? Oh, the business retention and expansion. They conducted a survey and had, I can't remember, 50 some businesses that they interviewed in the retail and food and beverage sector. And so they just got a feel for, how they saw their business. Were they planning on expanding their business? Did they rent their facility, or was there plans in the future if they were going to expand or renovate? Talked about employee, how it was for keeping staff and stuff. So it's pretty interesting. It gives you a lot of information about that. What else, Brian?
Well, I had 102 written down here. The food and retail businesses that they surveyed. The PEP funding that remains, they were looking for a home for that. It's $57,000 that wasn't used for the energy from waste proposal that the CARES grant initially was being set aside for, and they were looking for ideas for that. We talked a little bit about energy generation for industrial areas, and I brought up fuel cell technology, and so I think they got some guidelines and some direction to perhaps pursue. The high school skills day event is they've slated it for May. Dan Klein's going to coordinate that, and did you talk about the physician recruitment session workshop that they're planning for February 13th in Lethbridge? Or there's one in Lethbridge, and they want to be, I think the aim is to have a booth there and input, and hopefully bring a doctor along, because that's pretty key to selling your community. That's all I would like to add.
Is there somebody going from the committee? Down on the 13th?
Actually, it was going to be staff. They had said, Barry in the end had said it was that they would send staff.
Any questions? All right. The only other thing that I have on this list was we had a Southeast Mayors and Reeves meeting in Medicine Hat at the end of November, which was the first one since June, actually. Slack new chair, I tell you. Just kidding. Almost as slack as last one. So there were no MLA reports at all at it. The MP, Glenn Motz, had done up a report that was delivered by his executive assistant, and Martin was part of the same report. A lot of it Martin touched on last night, actually. The other thing was rural crime, which seems to be a topic always when it's MPs and MLAs gather, which I think we escaped in many ways. But there was a report from Barry for AUMA, and that was about the MSI negotiations at the time, which we now know Calgary and Edmonton have come up with something that they're close to settlement on. And neither RMA or AUMA have settled anything with the government. I think that'll happen in hopefully early in 2019. Halo is always on the agenda, it seems, because they're always squabbling with the government for the type of funding that STARS, because STARS does get some government funding, and although they talk a good story about their fundraising, and they do amazing fundraising as well. And so Halo has been trying to always just be treated the same as stars, although I think they really are two quite different operations. But the southeast area comes up, they have fundraisers and they do incredibly well for Halo. So, and Gordon Reynolds, I think maybe the guy he works for is the leader of Halo, or the big push behind it, the board chair or whatever. So it's always on the agenda. It's fun. And plant protein, Brian Bruin had arranged a presentation on plant protein, and we are going to be hearing much more about plant protein because the government has given this group some big money to do some research and for communities, well, not communities, for businesses that are already involved in doing something. It's sort of like adding value to grains and stuff. There's going to be applications made by those companies to expand and to grow the whole concept of plant protein, because the demand for plant protein increases. A lot of it's coming from the lentils and the beans and things, the legumes. So the South seems to be really quite excited about it because obviously there's lots of those crops grown in the South. So we'll be hearing more at Ag Service Board Conference about that as well. But it's a pretty low-key meeting, actually. And Anne-Marie was at PEP ahead of it, and we both managed to avoid our favorite person that also attends those meetings. Oh, yeah. Big as life. All right. Anything else from committee reports? That's all I think I had marked on. And on the agenda next says Joint Services Committee, and I don't know, we've had that report, right? Okay. Post-agenda items are in camera. Information items, the press release, of course, come up out. The first one, stay tuned. Minibus monthly report is in your packet. Strategic priorities chart, community events. Anything else before I move in camera? Wayne.
Okay. No, I think I'll hold on for a while. Okay. Something else flashed through my brain, and I think I'll just hold on.
You'll wait till the new year.
Yep.
Okay. Ariana, before we end the day, do we have some councillors that have presentations? Should we do that now? Yeah. I hope I have.
I don't know. Oh, it must be Brian and me.
We had a Christmas Christmas party, and there were a number of 5-year awards presented, and we had 4 councillors who were in that category, and only one was there, Wayne. And
I wasn't there.
Kelly, sorry, I looked over there and Wayne was just sitting grinning. Okay. Kelly,
I stand out in the crowd.
Kelly was there, and so she received her, along with the staff, she received her award at the same time as the other people did. And many years ago, it was decided that we as councillors would not take money for being on council for so long, because the staff gets $50 a year with it or something. So if you'd been with the county for 5 years, I think you get $250, because it gets hard to purchase gifts.
Shouldn't we look at that?
No. No cash. So what Ariana has come up with through the years are these beautiful shadow box little certificates. And the first year is the 5-year, 10, 15, 20, and God knows, we hope it will get to 35. But these are what people get. So that night, Kelly received hers, and through the years of these parties, I don't know why I ever started this, but I always wrote a limerick about the person, and as you know, limericks can be nasty, they can be rude, they can be obnoxious. And the theme also was Dr. Seuss, you have to remember that. So, and I'll just give you an idea of what, and because I found out that Kelly was the only councillor attending, I whipped up two limericks for Kelly. No, it was brief. I had talked much longer right now. So I'll just revisit Kelly's to give everybody that wasn't there, that's on council, a little idea. And I also asked fellow colleagues around the table to quickly send me a word or two of what immediately came to their mind when they heard the name Kelly Christman, for example. So these were the words that came up for Kelly: approachable, straightforward, solution-oriented, community-minded, into royal purple, not to be confused with deep purple, and jolly. And so because it was Dr. Seuss, I also found a quote out of Dr. Seuss for each one of you councillors of 5-year term. And Kelly's was, "You're off to great places, today is your day, your mountain is waiting, so get on your way." And her two limericks were, "Kelly Christman's a councillor rare, she'd never turn you down on a dare. Her blush is so pretty, and always so witty about her residence, she really does care." The second one was, "There is a Councillor Kelly who is not a negative Nelly, with input spot on and occasionally all wrong. And remember, you have to find words that rhyme. "We think she is really quite swell." Okay, so we're moving on to Ellen. She was next on the list here. So Ellen, the words that people gave back to me were good-natured, interested in people, determined, sun and white wine lover. And your Dr. Seuss was, "How did it get late so soon? It's night before it's afternoon. December is here before it's June. My goodness, how the time has flown. How did it get late so soon?" Now, and your limerick, "Ellen Unruh, a rarity indeed. She works hard to keep up to speed. With a flip of her hair, her thoughts she does air, like Lady Godiva on her steed." Tracy, "Caring, hard worker, good sense of humor, craziest laugh around." Dr. Seuss, "A person's a person no matter how small. If you never did, you should. These things are fun, and fun is good." And Tracy's limerick was, "There is a county rep from Castles who has a few ratepayer hassles. She handles them well, never says go to hell. With her approach, her performance dazzles." And Wayne, also known as Hammergren, "Gutsy, outspoken, traveler, a shoo-in to be on The Bachelor." And I personally, this is my addition, my first experience meeting was, he didn't even open his laptop. So I thought, whoo, this guy's got a long way to go. Anyhow, and what his Dr. Seuss was, "I meant what I said and I said what I meant." And I had for everybody gathered that night about from Dr. Seuss, you ought to be thankful a whole heaping lot for the places and people you're lucky you're not. And Wayne's limerick was, what does one say about Div 4 Wayne? He's certainly not one to be vain. His outbursts, not surprising, gets temperatures rising. Will he ever learn to refrain? So, Tracy, here's your little rascal. Ellen. I know, Wayne. Be careful. I never thought I'd be. I'm glad we remembered to do that. You're welcome. I guess it was fun. I'm missing next year's staff party too. Okay, we're at in camera. Okay, we need a motion to move in. Ellen will move. All in favor? Opposed? We're in camera.